Verëvkina Cave disaster. Sergey Kosv, a 37-year-old father and thrill-seeker from Sochi, Russia, had become obsessed with Verëvkina Cave, the deepest cave on Earth, plunging more than 1.3 miles beneath the surface. Despite having only 2 prior caving experiences, Sergey was drawn to its mystery like a moth to flame. To him, Verëvkina wasn't just a cavern, it was a calling. The unimaginable depth, the brutal complexity. It was a siren song to his adventurous spirit. Verëvkina is among the most brutal environments known to man, a nightmare of vertical shafts, knife-edge ledges, rope drops, and tight, flooded passageways stretching half a mile at the bottom. Even the world's top cavers, like Russia's elite Perovo speleology team, had taken days to descend and return, relying on flawless planning and team-based relays to move hundreds of pounds of equipment. Every movement was measured, every risk anticipated. Sergey knew the stories, especially the harrowing 2018 flash flood during a joint expedition with National Geographic's Robbie Schoen. That day, the cave turned hostile without warning. A distant rumble became a thunderous roar as icy floodwaters barreled through the system. Water cascaded down vertical shafts, blasting the team with freezing spray. Tents and supplies vanished. The explorers scrambled to survive, clinging to ledges, gasping for air. They lived, but barely. For most, it was a cautionary tale. For Sergey, it was inspiration. He devoured expedition reports, traced route maps, and studied photos. The cave didn't frighten him. It beckoned. It was no longer a place to fear, but to conquer. On November 1st, 2020, Sergey quietly set out for the Caucasus Mountains, telling his wife and children only that he was going on a personal journey to find meaning. He never mentioned Verëvkina. He didn't tell them he would be alone. His true plan was a solo descent into the cave he'd come to see as destiny. Reaching the cave entrance took a brutal trek, kilometers uphill, through soaked, treacherous forest. At the jagged mouth of Verëvkina, Sergey paused. No permit, no radio, no team, just a rope, a plan drawn from YouTube, and unshakable resolve. He clipped in and descended. The first drop hurled him into silent, endless darkness. His headlamp flickered across sharp stone, revealing the immense void swallowing him whole. Gear lowered in waterproof sacks, he rappelled deeper into the underworld. That night, he camped more than 1,000 feet below ground, resting at a site once used by the Perovo team. He logged his position in a journal, ate a modest meal, and braced for day 2. The deeper he went, the more unforgiving the cave became. Narrower, colder, darker. But Sergey pressed on. On the second day, he passed through steep, icy shafts, clinging to slick rock as the cave closed in around him. Eventually, he reached a deeper camp. Abandoned, silent, eerie. Old food caches remained. Logbooks hinted at lives that had passed before. Sergey made a final journal entry, November 3rd. It would be the last sign of life. When the Perovo speleology team returned on November 6th, they sensed something was wrong. Footprints, disturbed equipment, gear that didn't belong. Sergey had come and gone deeper. As they descended, clues fell into place. Sergey had pushed far beyond safe limits, alone, untrained, and without support. Near the cave's lowest sump, a frigid, water-filled chamber, they found him. His body lay in a shallow pool, face up, his headlamp still casting a dim, ghostly glow. His gear sat nearby. A plastic container held notes, tracking his journey step by step. His final entries were lucid, reflective, even poetic. Authorities believe Sergey reached what he thought was the cave's final chamber. Hoping to mark the moment, he may have entered the freezing sump to swim. But the water, just above freezing, would have instantly drained his strength. No wetsuit, no backup. Fatigued, dehydrated, possibly injured, Sergey likely passed out in the icy darkness. Hypothermia would have followed within minutes. A head injury couldn't be ruled out. What is certain, Sergey Kosv died alone, far beneath the earth. On a bitterly cold afternoon, November 28, 1985, 7 cavers stepped into Culverson Creek Cave in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. Their original plan to explore Friar's Hole had been scrapped. Heavy rains had caused dangerous flooding. Though unfamiliar, Culverson seemed like the safer alternative. The cave's narrow canyon, just 5 to 8 feet wide, featured a swift, shallow stream gliding over slick rock slabs. Only 50 feet in, they came upon a massive 5-foot-high boulder wedged in the passage. The group faced 2 options: climb over it or squeeze past a tight, wet gap where the stream gushed through. 3 cavers successfully slipped by. Eric Tacy, a 26-year-old seasoned caver, led the next group. He chose the left-hand route and moved cautiously through the water. But as he reached the heart of the passage, disaster struck. The giant boulder shifted. The team rushed to stop it, but their efforts were in vain. The rock slammed into the narrow corridor, trapping Eric against the cave wall. His left temple and shoulder crushed against the stone, his right cheek pressed cold and hard against rock. His legs dangled helplessly beneath him. The crushing weight squeezed the breath from his chest. Panic surged. One caver sprinted for help while the others tried everything, shoving, prying with crowbars, but the boulder wouldn't budge. Eric stayed conscious for only 30 seconds. Each breath grew shallower until he fell still. A trickle of blood slipped from his nose, and his pulse faded. One friend tried to prop him up, but the pressure was unrelenting. All that remained was the chilling sound of water echoing in the dark. Almost an hour later, rescuers arrived with a hydraulic jack. Every second mattered. With combined force, they finally shifted the stone just enough to pull Eric free. His friends dragged his motionless body to a dry patch and began CPR, hands shaking, hearts pounding. Every breath they gave, every compression, carried desperate hope. But Eric didn't respond. His skin turned ghostly pale. Though his body was still warm, life was fading fast. Paramedics arrived and took over, fighting to revive him for over an hour. At 5:25 p.m., Eric was carried out on a stretcher and rushed to the hospital. Doctors administered IVs and cardiac drugs in a final, urgent bid to save him. But it was too late. Eric Tacy was pronounced dead, a life taken by a cruel twist of fate. The cave that seemed like a safe detour had become his final resting place. Mossdale Cave tragedy. Deep beneath the earth, 6 men crawled through the unforgiving passages of Mossdale Cave, traversing a section called Far Marathon. It stretched the length of 3 football fields, barely wider than a laptop screen. Movement came not by walking, but by wriggling, often flat on their stomachs. Dave Adamson led the team. Jeff Bow, Colin Vickers, John Ogden, Bill Frakes, and 17-year-old Michael Ryan, through this suffocating maze. Above ground, Dave's fiancée, Morag, waited anxiously, their wedding only days away. The first warning came softly, a faint rise in groundwater, a subtle surge in the cave stream. But the whisper grew into a roar. Water poured in, fast, fierce, unstoppable. The men knew they had to retreat. 3 hours from a nearest exit, they faced a brutal decision. Jeff and young Michael were first to turn back, inching into the flooded tunnel as walls of water surged toward them. They clawed forward, searching for breath in the rising dark. Behind them, Dave ushered the others into the same narrow hell. At the rear, John Ogden heard panic screams ahead. He jammed himself into a tight, overhead fissure, straining to find a gasp of air. The others pressed their faces upward toward the highest cracks, hoping for one more breath. But the water kept rising. It filled every crevice, every hollow, silencing every last cry for help. On the surface, a lake had formed. Morag reached the cave entrance and knew something was wrong. She ran 3 miles, breathless, to find help, launching a desperate rescue mission. But hope had vanished beneath the earth. When rescuers reached Far Marathon, they found Jeff and Michael first. Their upper bodies slumped against a ridge, frozen in their final struggle for breath. One by one, the others were found, each still, each silent. All except John Ogden, whose body was wedged so deeply into the rock that it took 2 more days to recover him. Mossdale Cave had claimed them all. Acton Cave. Hidden beneath the jungles of Mexico lies Acton, the longest underwater cave system in the world, stretching over 368 kilometers, 229 miles, of submerged tunnels and chambers. In December 2004, 9 skilled divers set out to explore one of its branches, cenote Kalima. All were seasoned cave divers, veterans of countless dives. It was a bright, cloudless morning when they arrived. The team meticulously checked every piece of gear: regulators, tanks, reels of guideline, and cookies, the brightly colored markers used to map the route. Everything was double-checked. They had a solid dive plan. Team A would enter first, placing markers along the route. Team B would follow shortly after, turning back at a predetermined point. The cave itself was not deep, only about 33 feet, but it was winding and intricate. Spirits were high. Everyone felt ready. Team A slipped beneath the surface. The water was crystal clear at first, but as they descended deeper, it dimmed. Carefully, they followed the main guideline, placing their colored markers at key intersections. At the first fork, they attached a yellow cookie, Team B's cue to go left. Minutes later, Team B entered the cenote, following the same line. All seemed to be going perfectly. After about 32 minutes, Team B reached the second marker. But then, something went terribly wrong. Instead of turning left toward the exit, they mistakenly turned right. A fatal error. In the shadowy tunnels, everything looked eerily similar. They didn't realize they were heading deeper into the cave system, farther from safety. For 25 minutes they swam in the wrong direction, covering an additional 1,400 feet. It wasn't until the water turned colder and the silt stirred with each movement that they sensed something was off. Visibility dropped. Anxiety crept in. Panic followed. Meanwhile, Team A had safely completed their dive and surfaced, removing the markers on their way out, unaware that Team B was now hopelessly lost. Deep in the cave, Team B finally reached another intersection. They stopped, confused and scared. One diver tried retracing their path, but the route had vanished into darkness. Worse, their air supplies were dwindling. The team split into two pairs, desperate to find their way back. The first pair swam ahead, hoping for familiar signs. But when they returned to the fateful fork, their worst fears were confirmed. The marker was gone. They had no way to know which path led back. Their hearts beat faster as they realized they were lost. When people panic, they breathe faster, which uses up air more quickly. Soon, one diver's tank was almost empty. He had to share air with his partner, both of them taking turns breathing from the same tank. On the surface, Team A realized something was very wrong. Team B should have been back by now. Grabbing extra air tanks, some divers went back into the water to search for their friends. They didn't have to search long. Just 250 feet from the exit, they found the first pair from Team B. They were barely alive, with almost no air left, but they were safe. The rescuers asked where the other two divers were. The first pair said they had seen the lights of their teammates not far behind. The rescuers waited, but no one else appeared. They went back into the cave, hoping to find their friends alive. In the dim light of their flashlights, they saw two still figures floating near the cave ceiling. The two divers had run out of air. When their tanks were checked later, they were completely empty. They had died in the cave they came to explore,